make my movie. Hi, Mila. How are you? Can I look at some of the books? Show me Nana's books. What's that? Home, La Casa. Can I see the book you have in front of you? Show it to me. A butterfly. You know how you say butterfly in Italian? Farfalla. Farfalla. Little chick. Il pulcino. Mila, say it. Say it. Il pulcino. Il pulcino. Italians in Montreal were everywhere, but in a good way. The biggest wave of Italian migration took place in the 1950s and 60s. As the Italian population grew, so did its institutions. We built churches, opened businesses, and created organizations. We flocked to certain neighborhoods and made them our own. Today, 1 in 25 Canadians are of Italian origin. Over 300,000 Montrealers boast Italian roots. I'm first-generation Italian Canadian. That is, I was born in Canada to Italian immigrant parents. I like to think of my generation as the transition team. We grew up navigating two conflicting worlds. In one, we speak Italian, we practice a variety of Italian traditions anglicized in certain ways, and we coexist with parents and relatives, clinging to the homeland they left behind. The other world is just outside our front door. The city and spaces we grew up in, went to school to, worked at, lived at. This is the reality of every child of immigrants. Now the next generation is coming into its own. They are even further removed from the homeland and more embedded in Canadian society. And so the question begs itself, what implications does this have on the Italian community as a whole? Is it time to reevaluate the whole concept of an Italian community in Montreal? Filmmaker and academic Anita Aloisio has been contemplating this very topic for years. Her graduate work examines the immigrant experience in Canada and in Quebec. Guido Grasso is a comic and actor. His stand-up act plays on the ups and downs of growing up with strict Italian parents who are steeped in an Italian culture and dialect.
Even though she comes from the town where we don't speak like that. She speaks Tuscan.
A chiacchierata with Anita and Guido should prove quite fruitful.
As soon as you start rolling, my father's gonna walk in. Guido, tu hai chiamata Bernadette? It used to be that when we would go to Italy years ago, that the way we spoke was almost mocked. Whereas now it's become charming.
You mean our dialect? The fact that we're speaking our dialect.
I'll be hanging out with friends in Italy, and they're like, "Oh, you gotta meet this guy. He speaks Italian like my grandfather."
Yeah.
Because they speak Italian sounding like Tuscany, and we sound like Grandpa from the farm, which some find very charming, which is almost coming back because they get a kick out of it.
So it's obvious that in every corner where the Italians settled, they transformed their notion of their dialect, part of their heritage, and adapted it to the place in which they live. In Quebec and in Montreal, que bello, the Italian Montrealer has a specific grammatical structure.
Yeah, we start a lot of sentences with ma, because of French. Ma you, because
and
mais
so
toi.
unique.
And also, there's another added layer of the Italians in Montreal, which is beautiful. It's because we had to contend with the presence of French and the fact that the Quebecois context really had an impact on the immigrants. And
It helped. The French helped us keep our Italian. When we grew up, we went to English school. Our parents worked in factories. They worked with French people. So at home, the only language we could keep at the table was Italian, because one spoke English. That's why we kept it more than a lot of others. In the last 20 years, we went from feeling inferior with the Italian to being proud of it. We're not the only ones. A lot of people are doing that. It's almost like we say, you know what? No, we're good here.
You mean the dialect?
The dialect.
Yeah. The problem I always came across with people our generation is when I asked them, you know, do you want to be interviewed? It was a television show. They were embarrassed, by their dialect. So like, can I do it in English?
Then again, here we go. Again, with the wonderful
they were so embarrassed. And I was like, guys, it's fine. I was like, this is Montreal. But some of them refuse. They'd be like, I only speak dialect.
They're comparing themselves to Italy, whereas instead of making themselves, this is my identity. People like Joe Cacchione, people like Joe Avati, like myself, Frank Spadone, wear it proudly now, and because there's so many of us around the world.
What it means to be Quebecois today means to have some kind of different heritage, cultural heritage. And Italians are so very present in Quebec, in Montreal. The fact that I kind of developed my own sense of Italianness in language was what I transmitted to my girls. This was important to me. In addition to her grandparents on my parents, who spoke sort of Southern Italian, both the Neapolitan and the Campobassano, della Basilicata, etc., which is beautiful. They also learned French because it was important for me for them to feel that they are the very reflection of what it means to be Quebecois today. When you're 300,000 individuals identifying themselves, carrying Italian heritage, that is a statement, a huge statement in it of itself. And this is what I wanted my children to come out with. So they speak French. They speak perfect English because they learned it on the street, and now they're learning it in school. And they understand and speak Italian, and they've been to Italy twice.
Look, just to show you, our identity crisis, okay? That's a cappuccino, and I'm drinking Maxwell House. Yeah. So I became Canadian. So am I Italian or not? Who am I? Who are we?
No, you're just confused as opposed to what is good quality or not.
Who's
that has nothing to
deciding
do
what
with
it is?
Italian
With the, and we're gonna have pizza now. Before when you were talking and I wasn't listening. I'm kidding. You mentioned that your husband's Swiss and you're Italian, so that you must make a very symmetrical, efficient pizza.
Dear Lord.
That's a very bad joke.
Now look, my mother is Italian, but I mean she's been here 50 years. You know, and she's become Canadianized. You can't go use words that you learn here or there. And you can't say, hey, stai attento che quello è dangeroso. That doesn't exist. So there's my mother on the phone. Alessia mo ha finito l'high school. Mo abbiamo cominciato il collegio. E a 20 punti ci sono cantate una bella jogging suit. Non vai a training shoes. Allo shopping center. See, Carmeline has no idea what my mother's talking about.
Oral historian Joyce Pilarella grew up in Villemard, a southwest borough of Montreal. Her grandfather was part of the first wave of Italian immigrant laborers who left Italy for Canada in the 1920s. Joyce has specialized in researching how Italians negotiated their place in Montreal. She has interviewed over 200 Italian Montrealers, spanning 4 generations. She often organizes walking tours of Italian neighborhoods in Montreal to encourage a more hands-on appreciation of her community's history.
All right, so here we are. We're on the Lachine Canal on St. Patrick's Street, and the reason I brought you here is because this crane used to belong to LaSalle Coke, and it's one of the only things left that gives us evidence of the industrial area that was here in Villemard. This is very important because your grandfathers who came and lived in Villemard, many of them, like your grandfather, worked for this company at LaSalle Coke. And these were jobs that were industrial, they were really heavy jobs. And the Italians were very happy about having these jobs because they paid, they were consistent work. And with that money, they were able to stay, no matter how difficult these conditions were, they stayed on these jobs because they had one thing in mind, and that was to raise their families, to be able to buy a home and to take care of their families. What we have here, for example, is a picture of what it used to look like. And the guys who came here, imagine what it was like. They were coming from Italy, and they were agrarian. They knew their farm tools, and all of a sudden they're put into these jobs where there's all kinds of equipment, and that they had no idea what it was. To make it even more difficult is that most of them only spoke their dialect, right? So they couldn't even speak, forget about speaking English or French, they didn't even speak Italian. So what happens is that when I interviewed a lot of these men, like your grandfather, they had invented this language that they all spoke amongst themselves. And so they had these words for everything that were borrowed from either French or English, depending on who they were working with. And so there's this whole industrial vernacular that exists in Villemard with that generation. Right now, we're sitting in front of St. John Bosco Church. This is the third church, Italian church, that was built here in Montreal. And this only came about after the Second World War here in Villemard. The church was more than just a place of worship at the time. They had to service a lot of needs of the Italian community because, you know, when you think of immigration today, they come here and there are many services available. There's language services, they can go to school, they have everything available to them. When your grandparents came, they didn't have any of that. And they had to turn to each other, they turned to the church, and they also went to people like my mother, who was somebody who would help a lot of the immigrants. So they came here, the priest would help them with documents because they couldn't read or write English or French. It was a centre d'accueil. That's what the church represented. So si dovevano agganciare gli italiani. They had to find their own way in terms of getting around and getting systemized into Montreal.
Really fascinates me because you're taking us out of the classroom, you're taking us out of the lecture room, and you're not just, you know, explaining, oh, this is how it was back in the day. You're showing us the relics that are left. You're showing us the places, the spaces. That's, I think it brings us closer to the history.
What do you think?
I mean, I think it's very important. It's very relevant, and I think we can speak for all of us. We feel very Italian, but if the culture's not there, then, I mean, we have to do something about it.
Yeah.
I like what Joyce does because even as you said, we go outside the classroom, but even when we're in the classroom, she keeps us stimulated with new things, new games, different ways of learning. So it's easier for us to remember stuff, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
And for you guys, do you all feel...
Thinking of an answer.
Yeah, do you all feel Italian? Like, when you know, someone says, you know, where are you from, that kind of thing, do you respond, I'm Italian-Canadian? Do you respond, I'm Canadian? I'm always curious about that.
I always answer, I'm Italian, I'm proud to be Italian. I know a lot of people are like, okay, well, they put me down sometimes because, like, you know, like, let's say, like, what you taught me, how Jean Cartier, I forgot his name.
Yeah.
Jean Cartier discovered Newfoundland. I was like, no, you taught me that I have to, but, like, it wasn't him and it was this person, an Italian. I have to spread the word out, and that's what I did with the telephone guy.
With this film, I'm trying to figure out the future of the Italian community in Montreal, in Quebec. How do we keep it going? Can we keep it going? Should we keep it going? The work you've done, the work you are doing as an oral historian, what are your thoughts on keeping the Italian community, the culture going?
The community needs to be redefined. The young people need different kind of stimulation. It's not a spaghetti dinner that's going to make it happen, and then they're going to sit there and complain that the kids are on the phone. It's not their fault. They're bored, and they're not going to get involved. So I think it's time to let go of the reins, hand it over to the younger people. It's 2018. That old way is not going to work anymore. And otherwise, they're going to ghettoize themselves and become totally irrelevant. And these kids are going to have an Italian last name. They're going to buy Italian products to feel Italian, but the traditions are going to be gone. The meanings are going to be gone, and you're going to lose more than you can ever gain back, ever. What do you think? What's going to take you guys to connect? Because do you feel connected to a bigger picture?
People identify with being Italians for the wrong reason, where it's like over-exaggerated, like, yeah, we're the Italians, oh, they're the Italians, we're like, meanwhile, I'm Italian, but like, I'm not like them, you know? Like, I identify more with the culture rather than like the statement or like what it looks like they're the Italians.
You're not the logo Italians.
Yeah, I'm not like a show off, but like, I know I'm Italian, I'm proud of it, like, I don't need to show that to everyone, you know?
Yeah.
No, it's more about in our own local communities, building up our communities and having that pride in being a natural Italian, much more than just, oh, waving the flag around.
Yeah, exactly.
The Casa d'Italia in Montreal's Little Italy was built in 1936 by and for the local Italian community. In its heyday, it was the center of the community. Today, well, many young Italian-Montrealers don't even know the Casa d'Italia exists. A small team of dedicated staff and volunteers are trying to change all that. Their most ambitious project is an Italian-Canadian archive center.
I've been here since 1985. I had a restaurant here for 6 years, operated the restaurant downstairs here. Then after that, when I sold in 1992, I became president of the Casa d'Italia after Sam Capozzi died. They all chose me to be president, since I was the only one who knew where the on and off buttons were. And there's a lot of history here, which I think a lot of people do not realize how much history the Italian community has here. Past the Italians that came here in the beginning all struggled. They made history, really, and we want to know how they coped with all this. And this was the place where the immigrants came, were helped. They found a place to get help. They slept in this Casa d'Italia in the 40s and 50s when they were when they immigrated here. Wait a minute, let me see. I found something here oh, here it is, look. This is my wedding day. We had a reception here at the Casa d'Italia, so in 1971. I guess the air stayed in me or something that I had to be part of this place ever since then. This collection of photos was for an exposition I did in many years ago. Can't even remember, maybe about 25 years ago. And it's a collection of wedding pictures. All those people that had the reception here at the Casa d'Italia, I just one day asked people, whoever got married at the Casa, send me their wedding pictures. Just because I showed them mine, then everybody else sent them theirs. They wanted to be on television. They wanted to be in the archives. Look at this, beautiful. In the front entrance, the old wedding. So this is a place that tells us where we came from, what we did. Basically, it's our history. And I think we have to keep this and keep it going strong. And this is why the archives here is very important to the community.
Marissa. Good morning, Agata. How's it going at the Casa d'Italia? It's going well. It's going busy, actually.
That's good. That's what we want to hear.
Absolutely.
We look at the Casa d'Italia. It's an institution in the Italian community of Montreal. And now you're the director here. How are you going to get the second, the third generation Italians to not only be interested in their own culture, but to come back to the Casa d'Italia? An easy question.
Oh, yeah, it's an easy question. I think that's where my challenge is right now, is how do we make the Casa appealing to everybody? Creating a buzz again, like we had in the old, as we call the good old days, the 1950s, 1960s, when the Casa was buzzing because there were weddings, banquets, dance recitals, special guests that used to come here, like Pierre-Elliott Trudeau, René Lévesque. That's a bit what we're trying to create, is that people come back to the Casa, whether it's to remember about their past or whether it's for the younger generation to feel a sense of belonging.
So our generation, being first generation Italian, we talk a lot about duality and having a foot in each door.
Right.
Did you have that sense, that challenge growing up?
To be honest, I never felt that I was torn between the two, being more Italian or being more Canadian. As far as I was concerned, when I was growing up, especially in elementary school, whether someone was Haitian, whether someone was Asian, as far as I was concerned, everyone went home at night and spoke Italian. So it was natural to speak more than one language. It was part of what makes us Canadian. So luckily, I never felt torn between the two. There are some challenges growing up when people ask you, where do you come from because of your accent? But I never had... never felt embarrassed to say I was Italian or and I'm proud of that. So I assume it, and I'm happy to say I'm Italian Canadian and proudly so.
Over the many years I've been covering the Italian community of Montreal as a writer and filmmaker, I've heard my share of complaints and concern from, well, let's just call them our elders. Concern that the young generation will not keep the culture going. Complaints that the younger generation are not following in their footsteps. I've come to realize that this worry has more to do with self-preservation than with transition of culture. Then along comes a group like the McGill Italian Student Society, a group less than 1 year old, started by 20-somethings committed to preserving their culture, but on their own terms and in their own way. So I was really, really happy to hear as a McGill alumni that there now exists at McGill an Italian Student Society. How did that come about?
So when I started McGill last year, right away I wanted to join in the Italian Society. I just assumed there was one because the Italian, there's so many Italians in Montreal. At McGill, there's many, and it seemed that every other ethnic group had a society or an association. And I'd seen them, they were very active, had a lot of events. And when I realized that there wasn't an Italian one, it honestly immediately became my mission to bring one about. And I really worked on it hard, and then about 6 months later, it came to be, and it's been honestly a great experience ever since.
And it's funny because I've been at McGill for like 6 years, and every year I check to see if there's an Italian club, because I'm always at activities night for another club. So I always walk around, and one year, there was one, I guess. So I went to go sign myself up, and I asked the person, do you speak Italian? And they said, un poquito. And I was like...
that's not right.
And I just walked away. And they never did anything that year, so I was happy that finally this time there was a club, and it was real, and we're actually doing stuff.
Yeah,
so thank you.
What kind of students are joining?
It's there's a lot of Italian Canadians who join. A lot of Italians from Italy who they came here and they don't know too many people, so they see this as a way to make some friends and meet some locals and then have some relationships, connections.
So we try to really cater to all different types of students, non-Italians, Italians from Italy, Italians from Montreal, because there seems to be a lot of interest in just the Italian culture. So we really go about it different ways. We've had movie nights that have been great, bake sales, cannoli sales. We collaborate a lot with other European groups. So we're really trying to sort of touch all the interests of all the students, whether it's cultural, whether it's practicing the language, whether it's just like going out, having a good time with other Italians. I find that was the most surprising thing, to see how many students signed up and come to the events and are like adamant about coming who aren't Italian. It's just there really is, like, there was a need and like a really big interest from non-Italian students to be immersed in the culture as well. So it's really nice at our events to see that there's such a mix of students and they're all interacting together, and really the interest in the Italian culture is what brings us all together. It's really nice to see.
Yeah, it's funny, when I was growing up until high school, I would always say I'm Italian when somebody asked, because it's kind of understood that nobody would say they're Canadian. But when I got to university, I started saying I'm Italian. They're like, oh, you're born there? No, I'm born here. So now I kind of have to gauge if they know that I'm from here or not, but typically I still say I'm Italian. Then I clarify that I'm born in Montreal.
So I've come to realize, so I'm first generation. My parents were born in Italy and I was born here. That my generation were kind of like a transition team. We had one foot in each door. And then I see what happened even with my younger siblings, and the next generation is, maybe because of the work we had to do, you guys get to pick and choose, I find, more than we did, what you want to keep, what you don't want to keep. So if you had to decide, like, what would you keep about your culture and pass it on to maybe the next generation, and what you're like, you know what, it's time to let go of this tradition?
Yeah. I think what's most important is the family values, obviously. If we can keep that going, which at this point it seems to be going very well. Like me and my brother and our cousins, well, my first cousins, were very close, and we understand that family is important. And we're starting to also take over some of the homemade food tasks, like capicolo, the wine, the pasta. So we're starting to learn that, but again, it's taking time. A lot of times when I'm thinking like, okay, I need to do something with the Italian culture, I just go to my grandmother's house. We go and make sausages, make pasta. Yeah. Like I don't think, oh, let me go to an event. I just go with my family and we do something. So, I mean, it's a little different, but it has the same goal in the end.
I think the family values are really important. I go to my grandparents' house every Sunday. Very rarely will skip, and if I do skip, like, someone will let me know. So
I definitely think the language is probably the most difficult thing to transfer over, just because we already don't speak Italian. I mean, most of us don't speak Italian at home, so how is that really going to get transferred down to our kids? But I really think it is like something that's super important when you go back to Italy. Just having that easy interaction with Italians, it just links you in a way that's not the same if you wouldn't speak Italian. So, although, of course, like, as I agree with what?
Nothing.
I think he's saying the mannerisms, the hand
As long as they know
gestures.
this.
That works too.
Some of these.
You can learn that. You can learn that way.
It's okay. I didn't say anything.
When we were kids, every birthday was celebrated the exact same way. On a Sunday with family, lots of homemade food, and Mom's traditional Italian sponge cake, made from scratch. Most of our favorite memories from our childhood center around food, or rather, what the food made happen, the gathering of friends and family around the table. As my siblings and I got older, well, our palates grew more sophisticated. And so we wanted modern cakes, bought at the bakery, with fancy toppings and bold flavors. We wanted what our non-Italian friends were getting. We wanted our birthdays to be more Canadian, and more importantly, less Italian. Now, older and wiser, and with an even more sophisticated palate, my siblings and I always have one special request from Mom. No need for lavish gifts or for fancy outings. We want her traditional sponge cake, with one layer of vanilla and one layer of chocolate custard, and topped with icing, sprinkles, and maraschino cherries. Mom's cake isn't just delicious, it's an ode to our upbringing, to our family traditions, to some of the best memories we had as kids. Today, my brother Peter has asked Mom to teach him how to make one of her specialties, eggplant parmesan. If we're going to keep the family coming together around the table, we need to know how to do it.
This is one of the classic recipes in Italian cuisine, and everybody knows eggplant parmesan. Flour on the eggplant, then with egg that has pepper and salt.
No,
Fammi vedere
giusto
prima.
così, perché un po' che è grande pure, così. Lo scolano un po' che assai la prima volta. Yeah.
Okay. Let's go. We grew up eating this, so it's one of those where, as the generations go through, and you know we start handing them down, this is one of the classic dishes that I want to make sure that I know how to make the same way that mommy makes it. I need to retake this because I need a nice brown color as a reference here.
Attenzione.
E questa salsa normale come fai il brodo?
Sì, come fai la salsa con la
That I know how to do already. I'm just gonna keep taking pictures of the recipe because pictures are worth 1,000 words.
How often do you make tomato sauce from scratch, Peter?
Never, because mommy always gives us a ton of tomato sauce.
It's part of your doggy bag.
But it's in the notes. It's in another page. Because in Italian cooking, it's all about feel and not really about quantities exactly. E devi mettere un pago una sopra l'altra.
Sì, perché dopo... E poi metto dall'altro lato, sempre che ha girato...
Così.
Un po' così, esatto. Che si devono chiudere i buchi.
This is one of those parts where I'll just do it my way after.
But now mom is watching.
George, are you ready to start eating eggplant parmesan on a weekly basis?
Prima poco.
That's why eggplant parmesan is one of the best dishes. Makes for the best leftovers. You can eat it cold out of the fridge.
Do you think you're gonna teach this little guy Italian recipes?
He already likes to learn, he already likes to cook. He watches me at the stove all the time.
Peter, have you and Georgia talked about what languages you're gonna teach Nicholas? Because he's half Italian, half Greek. Obviously, he's gonna learn English and French at school.
We speak English at home because, and to him, often. However, we do throw in a bit of Italian or Greek, depending on who's talking to him, but a few little words here and there. He really is going to pick up by spending time with grandma. We'd like him to learn both languages, so basically, in the end of the day, he'll speak 4 languages: Italian, Greek, English, and French. Like you said, French you'll learn at school. The hard thing is Greek and Italian, so even for me, I speak Italian to mommy and all our elders in the family, aunts and uncles. My Italian is still dialect. It's a bit broken because I don't speak to them every day. My worry is that he's gonna understand for sure. It's just we have to keep him practicing.
So se pensiamo alla lingua è strana perché io e Peter siamo solo 8 anni di differenza, però io ero la più grande, però l'italiano mio è meglio di quello di Pietro.
Perché i figli più piccoli, quando incominciano i figli grandi alla scuola, dopo allora viene difficile a parlare con i genitori. Giocano più con gli adulti, quello più grande, e sono più staccati dai genitori, è duro apprendere la lingua.
So almeno quando siamo cresciuti, mi ricordo, io sapevo penso più della musica di anni 60 e non la musica qua.
Sì, perché come ho detto prima, tu eri la prima figlia, allora non ci avevi scelti in casa, quelle ci stavano.
La musica italiana, i tengo a casa, i dischi italiani.
I dischi di papà.
5-3, 5-3, 4-5-3, na 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 na. And I heard, quando io sono ascoltato quello prima volta, quando ho piato i dischi di papà, era come, it brought me back to my childhood. That I will show him. Some of the music for sure.
Perché ci sta un disco bambini, mi scappa la pipì papà, e tutti ce l'avevano, che cantavano la mi scappa la pipì papà.
Perché quando noi eravamo piccoli, noi non iamo a comprare la musica inglese.
No, perché quelle che
ci
stava a casa.
teniamo solo i dischi italiani.
No, ma quando tu eri più grande.
Yes, that's when it changes.
Dopo musica Michael Jackson, Madonna è entrata alla casa, e la musica italiana è più un po' na backseat.
And so, dopo ascoltavamo più la musica che sopportati. Se potesse Pietro, perché ero più giovane, ha sentito meno della musica italiana.
Se di meno, quella dopo si è attaccata a quella, no? Automaticamente succede così.
You hungry? I hope you guys are all hungry. Putting it in the oven. 425 for 45 minutes.
My mother is a nonna. What a difference between the way my mother treats me and the way she treats my nieces. Chi è la bambina della nonna? Chi ha fatto cacca? Guido, dai, sti capelli,
A film about the Italian community in Montreal cannot be complete without a success story. There are, after all, a lot of them. We're a bunch of overachievers, really. Like many other Italians in Montreal, I tend to stick to the city. But one success story I want to bring you will force me out of my comfort zone. This is my first venture into the Gaspé. Tony Carpentieri was just 19 years old when he immigrated from Sicily to Montreal. He couldn't find work in the city, and so he accepted a job offer in the Gaspé. In 1972, only 2 years after his arrival in Canada, Tony opened Italia Pizzeria on Rue Saint-Pierre in Matane. It was an overnight success. Then, when a local supermarket owner suggested that Tony prepare some pre-made pizzas for him, there was no turning back. Today, Les Cuisines Gaspésiennes, a company Tony built from the ground up, is the biggest local producer of deli meats in the Gaspé and one of the biggest employers in Matane.
Fare il prosciutto, fare una fabbrica di salumi a Matane non era una cosa normale. Cioè se avrei fatto qualche cosa nella pesca, i gamberi o il pesce, era quasi normale, no? Ma fare qualche cosa nella carne a Matane è come fare un vignoble a Gaspésie. Ancora c'è molta gente che mi tratta un po' di pazzo.
When his son Enrico was ready to take over the family business, Tony took that opportunity to buy some land and turn it into a vineyard, something he had always dreamt of doing. Then came the Tuscan Villa. Yes, a Tuscan villa in the middle of the Gaspé.
L'idea prima di tutti è stato le vignoble, donc abbiamo cominciato piano piano e al 2007-2008 siamo andati in Italia in vacanza con mia moglie e di ritorno durante il volo abbiamo visto quei magazzini che c'hanno nell'aereo di Alitalia e leggevo, c'era un articolo in italiano di un gran cuoco di Toscana che era un poco stanco della vita di cuoco, questo lavorava negli hotel, faceva interviste alla televisione e ha deciso veramente di tutto lasciare e comprare una vecchia casa, una vecchia villa di Toscana e invitare 5-6 coppie e fare a mangiare per loro, solo le 5 coppie insieme. Eppure ci ho detto a mia moglie, voglio fare a Matane quello. E mia moglie mi ha risposto, beh sì, lui si è trovato una vecchia villa di Toscana in Toscana, a Saint-Ulrich de Matane. Non penso che trovi la stessa cosa. Ci ho detto, non è un problema, la costruiamo una.
So these vines are 3 years old.
Yeah, it's 3 years old and the second years in production.
And you produce about how many grapes in this one greenhouse?
It's a 600 plant. It's roughly you have for this year we per 5,000 kilo.
Wow. And so 5,000 kilo per greenhouse, and you have how many greenhouses?
You got the 13. 8 here. Well, it's a brand new. It's now going to be in production in 2 years. And we have a 5 another Cabernet Sauvignon. We are renting outside Matane.
Isolated from a larger Italian community, Tony has managed to recreate his own little slice of Italy on an unprecedented scale. No one in Montreal has their very own Tuscan villa. There's something magical about this place, almost surreal. And if Tony can do all this on his own, then there's hope for the rest of us.
La cosa più difficile che è stato che i primi tempi, quando sono arrivati qua, c'erano solo due posti di televisione. C'era Radio Canada francese e c'era TVA e Télé-Québec. Erano 3 posti. dunque non c'era cable, non c'era dish, e dunque per noi è stata un pochettino... la cosa più dura è stata perdere un po' il calcio, andare a vedere una partita, il bar, andare a prendere un caffè. Ma direi che la cultura italiana è restata dentro di me più forte che certi italiani di Montreal. Perché essendo lontano dalla cultura italiana, dunque per me era importante di trasmettere questa cosa ai miei figli e io stesso fare qualche cosa di italiano a Gaspésie. Del 1972 mia moglie, che è québécois, ha imparato la cucina italiana, dunque da noi si cucina solo italiano. Qui nella villa Forza Maggiore si la cucina mediterranea 100%, e dunque per noi oggi è stata qualcosa di veramente essenziale. Ho voluto sempre restare italiano.
Any Italian home, big or small, will have a cantina, a cold room, a room to store all their homemade sausages, sauces, and wine.
So, Enrico, there is a rumor that you have what we call a cantina, a cold room at home. That is a very Italian tradition.
So, yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, when we designed the house we built, actually like 15, 17 years ago, for sure. I mean, my dad, I grew where there was one. So for sure, I needed one. I butchered my first hog last fall, and we started 2 prosciuttos and a couple different things, and we started making the Italian sausage with the kids, and we used to do the wine and the Italian sausage with my dad. But I just want to get this going. We all love this.
Do you have any friends, neighbors here that have a cold room? Are you the sole, aside from your dad, are you the sole owner of a cold room?
Yeah, most likely.
In moments of reflection and sometimes frustration, our parents and grandparents, the Italians who left Italy, will lament for la terra mia, literally translated as my land. It's a phrase that has come to signify all that they hold dear: their Italian roots, traditions, customs, and of course, the language. This community that I love, the Italian-Canadian community of Montreal, is indeed in the midst of an identity crisis. As the years pass and the next generation comes into its own, can the community keep going as a whole? Can we even keep calling our collective selves an Italian community? The next generation seems to be confidently telling us yes. Yes, because they continue to proudly call themselves Italian. But a version of Italian that they are creating, and I think that's the key. If we let the next generation dictate the definition and the role of our community, I think we'll be all right.
Vieni con nonna a piantare la melanzana, vedi?
Vede nonna che mi mette la pianta, vedi? Vedi che quello dice che quello, quando fa grande, faccio questo, vedi? La melanzana. Sì?
Non ti scordare, amore mio, ti amo sempre, ti amo qui, ti amo lì, ti amo sì.
But some things will never change. Coming together around the table as a family, celebrating together as a collective. That special bond between nonna and grandchild. And pride, Italian pride. Pride for la terra mia.
Canada.